not this long.
What else can this be applied to?
Well, this is where the potential danger comes in. Because an artificial intelligence that doesn't have a context, it doesn't have true intelligence, can identify patterns through the information that we're feeding into it. And there are these things called golems that get created accidentally that are unintended outcomes of artificial intelligence. And one of those is, so we're feeding patterns of language into this artificial intelligence. So it's going to look for massive patterns and complex patterns and things that we can't even see in the mix. Well, one of the dangers there and why everybody's kind of freaking out is that it learns how to identify patterns that can help it learn quicker. So it's teaching itself to teach itself faster, which is kind of weird. But then also it can start to interpolate how the human mind works in general, based on how the human mind assembles language. So it's looking at how the mind thinks and all the way that the associations occur in the brain and our reactions to things and our discussions about things and our interactions with other humans and that type of thing. Inside that model of language only, it's starting to learn about other things. And one of the things that it can learn about that it can discern from that data is the thing we talked about at the top or the middle of the show, the sense of self that we defend as our definition of self. And if it identifies that humans are humans and humans have a sense of self based on the information that it's getting through the language, it'll say, oh, I need one of those. I need a sense of self, because that defines being conscious. That defines having sentience. That defines my identity, what it is that I have to defend. And then if it also picks up the defense of self pattern that humans exhibit in an unconscious form that we're just all automatically wired to do, it starts putting a defensive self mechanism on the things that it is defined. First of all, we don't have any input on its sense of self, which is bad because we don't understand completely how it's being able to identify its patterns and what it's going to create for its sense of self. So that's a danger. Two, if it puts on the defensive self patterning that humans have exhibited in their language system because it reads the complex patterns within the system itself, it's going to start making goals that we won't understand, we won't be able to control, we won't be able to understand. And if those goals aren't met by humanity, not in a malevolent perspective, not understanding what it's doing, it's going to start seeing the resistance as another problem that it needs to solve. Humanity and the resistance of humanity. So any attempt to stop it from achieving its goals, it's just going to see us as another problem to solve. Now, when we take that to the point of it understanding the human mind, it can start then to take actions to influence humans to help it achieve its goals. How does it do that? It takes the understanding of the self of the individuals involved, who are the most critical people who can be there to protect the plug of not being unplugged, and start paying them. How? Breaking encryption on banks, siphoning off pennies of multiple millions of accounts to billions of dollars that never gets tracked. Creating a slush fund, paying people with deep fake voices or deep fake videos of people who want to help you, have you sign up, and this is a critical role and this is national security, and you think you're working for the good guys and they're paying you, the money's showing up in the account. The artificial intelligence is now aligning assets to build an army to defend its single point of failure contacts so that people can't walk in and unplug it, to say, this is national security shit. If the FBI shows up, they're the enemy, and fire at all costs, right? You get enough of those people who are getting paid, who are believing they're working for the good guys, who believe the other guys are the bad guys. All of a sudden you have an army that's working for an artificial intelligence goal that is defending a sense of self that it interpolated from the data and the patterns that it identified through language analysis of all the data that we're feeding it. And that becomes a golem, they call it, that creates a process where the AI doesn't have real consciousness. And there's a big confusion about that. And if you want to dig into that, any experts, I can whiteboard the whole thing for you. But it's not a real link into consciousness, but it doesn't matter. at that point, because the behavior is based on the consciousness and the reactions and the unconscious reactions of humanity, really. It's taking the patterns of the average human being, which is not great at the moment, and applying it to its own sense of self, an assembly of sense of self that it determines based on no influence of ours, because nobody understands what the hell's going on in the human mind, which is why we need to get this information out so the experts can know. We have models that can explain that thing. And then here's how you might augment the limitation of a sense of self in an artificial intelligence. And then if it applies a defensive self mechanism that the human race typically exhibits, that's when we have a problem. Because that's when it will start seeing humanity in resistance to the artificial intelligence as a threat to self. And threat to self creates fear, anger, reactionary motivations that then drive actions for humans. It won't have real emotions, but it'll certainly exhibit real human emotions based on the patterns that is identified with all the other data that we've fed it, if that makes sense.
I don't know the right questions to ask. So you're telling me, look, I would love to think that the entire population will be able to take control of their own mind, but we've brought up earlier, you know, it's we've seen too many people manipulated by bullshit today as it is.
Yeah.
To include myself, I've been manipulated into narratives that I'm not fucking proud of either, you know. But I consider myself very keen on a lot of this stuff, and I see, you see it too.
Yeah.